welcome to Kumbaya Corner. Hi guys, it's your host Ife Ivana. I hope everyone is doing okay, per usual. Literally recording this 30 minutes past midnight. I'm proud of myself, I guess. Yeah, so I'm down a rabbit hole again. Guys, when am I honestly not down a rabbit hole? Like, I be falling into all of these thinking loops of drawing parallels, and I created a web and I just had to share because I just feel like everybody needs to know this. So yeah, you guys are gifted to be hearing it from me. And it's the 0100 on delusion, or debunking delusion, quote unquote delusion, delulu, whatever you call it. May all your delulu come true, lulu. Or how does that meme go? But yeah, that's basically what it's about. Guys, let's ask ourselves this question. At what point does confidence turn into delusion, and why does it keep working? Because we can't deny the fact that it is a recipe that works, right? But like, why? And we're often like taught that, oh, delusion is bad, it's unrealistic, it's embarrassing. Oh, you need to be realistic. You need to set realistic goals for yourself. Why? Why can't I set delusional goals for myself? Is everyone okay? And pop culture has showed us the opposite. People lie, exaggerate, and even hallucinate a future, and it all works. And this is why it works, because delusion, just like any other thing, is a tool that you can use to your advantage. Okay, but it's not a tool that is not a sustainable. I would say it's not sustainable, but it works to a certain extent, if that makes sense. So yeah, what is delusion? Let's get a Google definition here. So delusion is a false belief or judgment about external reality held despite incontrovertible evidence to the contrary as a symptom of a serious mental illness. Oh my goodness. Google will always give you the worst definition first. What do you mean symptom of a serious mental illness? So, the second definition of delusion is a false belief, judgment, or perception, not the exaggerated definition that Google suggested. We're going to use the second one. But yeah, I've been thinking a lot about delusion lately, and not the chaotic kind, but the quiet, polished, and almost like admirable kind. The kind that lets people walk into rooms they technically weren't invited to, but somehow they stay. This is not an episode about lying, disclaimer, and it's also not about fraud, but it's about how belief, confidence, and audacity often create more momentum than truth ever does. And instead of deep theory, I wanted to show this through people we've all watched, judged, and I personally have been secretly fascinated by these people. First and foremost, I'm gonna say I think delusion is one of the most misunderstood tools of success, because I think we mistake it for the destination. But that's not what it is though. It's not the destination. Neither is it the moral compass. Neither is it a pass for you to just do what you like, or rather not do anything. But it's a key. It opens doors. Truth usually arrives later, sometimes as validation and sometimes as consequence. And I'm going to offer 3 characters who used delusion in different ways and got exactly what they wanted until they didn't. First and foremost, I will be starting with Delvey. I don't know if we're all familiar with the docu-series on Netflix called Inventing Anna. It's about this German heiress who was basically a fraudster, but it's like she was a very convincing one. Anna didn't convince people she was rich. She convinced people that she belonged. Her delusion wasn't loud or messy. It was calm, it was polished, it was unapologetic. She spoke the language of wealth fluently enough that no one asked for subtitles. Like, nobody ever questioned her, really. She never gave them a reason to doubt. her background. What she understood was that elite spaces don't run on truth, they run on signals, and she understood these signals. And once enough people accepted her story, it became functionally true. Money moved, doors opened, access was granted until the story just couldn't hold anymore. And Delvey shows us that delusion can act as social capital. It can buy time, it can buy proximity, but eventually the system starts to ask for receipts, and that is where she was lacking. Second, there's Frank Abnaghale, and I learned about his story when this over the weekend. I had like a movie marathon and I watched this movie, Catch Me If You Can. It's based on a real life story. So Frank Abnaghale didn't just lie, he stepped into roles before he was ready. He literally pretended to be a pilot, a doctor, and a lawyer. Like, how audacious. And this wasn't because he was qualified for any of this, but because he understood that authority is often performance first and verification later. His delusion created pressure. And that pressure forced him to learn fast, observe closely, and adapt constantly. In a strange way, pretending to be competent trained him into competence. Frank's story shows us delusion as momentum, a head start. Dangerous and illegal, yes, but undeniably effective. The truth did not lead, the story did. Guys. And third, there is Belle Gibson. Belle Gibson's story you can see also on Netflix. This is not a promo for Netflix, by the way, but then I might just turn it into one, haha, shooting all shots in 2026. But yeah, that was also a docu series, I guess, on Netflix called Cider, Vinegar, where Belle's story works because people wanted it to be true. She didn't just believe in herself; she asked others to believe it too, and that is where delusion crosses a line. Her narrative offered hope, control, and certainty in a space where people were desperate for all three. So basically, she was this healthcare influencer that basically came and lied that she had a brain tumor, which she was able to reverse through some remedy that she created, and then she started like an app of like healthy stuff. So it was basically a, how do I say it, coming for like how false health influencers can be. Basically, that was the story. So, but unlike the other people like Frank, Agbnaghale, and Delvey, her delusion didn't just fuel her ambition; it directed other people's lives. So, what you can note from that is that when belief stops being personal fuel and becomes public instruction, the cost is no longer abstract. Bell shows us the breaking point of delusion, when the story stops opening doors and starts causing harm. So, what do these stories tell us? Truth isn't always what moves first. More often than not, truth is just the story that survives long enough to be agreed upon. Belief creates momentum, confidence reduces friction, and audacity compresses doubts. And systems, especially fast, image driven ones, respond to those things before they respond to accuracy. And this is not me endorsing lies, this is just me noticing a pattern. And this is where it becomes real. I'm not saying be reckless, and I'm not saying you should deceive people, but I'm saying allow yourself a little delusion, the whimsical kind. Reach for the stars, believe a little harder than evidence allows. Let yourself move before you even feel ready. But just remember, delusion might open the door, but sustaining greatness, whatever that looks like to you, takes a lot more than belief. It takes discipline, consistency, and eventually the truth catching up. So I'll leave you with this. Delusion is not the destination, it's the key, and it's a very powerful one. Belief opens the door, and truth decides how long you stay. Thank you guys so much for sitting with me in this thought. And I just hope, I don't know, it has all opened our minds to just let yourself be a little delusional, because that's what you're going to need to take the next step. Because delusion comes with so much audacity that creates momentum. And that's just what I want us to open our minds to. And even more, take a step further and watch each of these stories. They're all on Netflix. Catch Me If You Can. This is the story of Frank Agbnaghale. Apple Cider Vinegar is the docu-series on Belle Gibson and the fraud she pulled, and watch Inventing Anna. Adding to the list is, I think it's called Imposter. I'm not sure, but it's about Elizabeth Holmes and, her own story. Each of these people are also paid for their crimes or are paying for their crimes. But up until the point where they started paying for their crimes, it was paying off. The delusion really, really paid off, and that is what I'm bringing our attention to. Thank you guys for listening. Welcome to Kumbaya Corner, and see you next time. It's your host, Ife Ivana.